So I'm here, very excited to introduce our special guest, Rachael O'Meara, and she she is the author of an incredible book called Pause, and hit the bestseller list. It's been featured on Wall Street Journal and all sorts of places. Her background from Google, like knowing what it's like to be, immersed in a lot of activity, having a lot of pressure, and just sort of this go, 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 nonstop sort of pace of life. And she found the power of pause and has even hit like the TEDx stage to share her wisdom and what she's learned about how to keep off the road to burnout, how to handle overwhelm before it like takes over your life. And she's here, and we're so lucky because I can't think of anybody else besides working parents or just parents in general right now who need to hear from you today and like glean from your wisdom, Rachael, because it's just so much stacked on to our plates these days. So welcome, Rachael. So good to have you here in the Raising Our Resilience parent group.
Hi, Vanessa, and hello, everyone. It's so good to be here. I'm honored to be here today as part of Mindful Monday and sharing what I can with what I know about the power of pausing. And so thanks for having me here. It's just exciting to share. I know we have so much in common in terms of who we serve and our messages, knowing we're really all about helping everyone kind of know more and be more self-aware to increase and strengthen your resiliency and boost literally your, I want to call it like your immunity or your like immune system for emotional and social learning, whether you're a parent or aspiring to be a parent, or you have like nieces and nephews. And I think it can also just be so good for yourself. I want to call it like your
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, I feel like, well, our global situation makes this work so important. And I'm especially excited because, during our 6-day training, we talked about the pause being that like there's 6 days and 6 skills. And the sixth one, the sort of like the big mother skill, so to speak, was the power of the pause, like being able to actually create a little space between our like flare of emotion and how we respond. Creating a pause proactively so that we have more in like kind of in our tank to use throughout our day and manage our stress is now more than ever. So today, like, I'm just so excited, Rachael, because you've done the research, you've written your book, you've shared it across stages. I heard you just did a talk at PayPal. I mean, people need you right now. And so one of the things that I'm excited for you to dive into today is the science of the pause and like how it's working in our body and how we can kind of like hack our nervous systems. And you were sharing that you have, 5 signs that you're heading towards that sort of overwhelmed nervous system or that burnout and the need for it. So we've got great content for you today. Stay with us till 2:30 because we've got a full session here. And put your questions in the comments, y'all. Like if you're here on Zoom, put it in the Zoom chat. If you're here on Facebook, put it in the comments. If you're on on Facebook where it just says Raising Our Resilience on the top and it doesn't say parent group, you need to hop over into the group to be able to see this in its entirety and be able to like engage in the comment section with us as Rachael's answering questions. So make sure you do that. The links in the post. All right, Rachael. So where would you like to start? Do you want to do the 5? Or do you want to do science?
5 signs.
Yeah, 5 signs. Hit us. We want to hear all
about it. And also, I think the word pause can mean so much to folks. And for me, the way I define it is it's an intentional shift in behavior. That's it. It's a pause is an intentional shift in behavior. So that can mean things like meditation. It can mean mindfulness, like being aware. It can also be something like a risky conversation, having the courage to say something that you haven't shared before, or being vulnerable, or letting someone see you fully and transparently, being fully present with someone else. So I want to preface that because I think a lot of times we hear the word and we're like, oh yeah, pausing, I'm taking a time out, or it just means meditation or something like that. But I invite you to think of it like this big umbrella, this holistic umbrella that could be applied in various times. And to me, it's like this gateway when you pause to step into being more self-aware, whether it's you as the parent or allowing someone else to even be aware as you give them that space or create the space. I like to say pausing is creating the space to find your truth. But with that, yeah, I can share a little bit about the 5 signs you know you need a pause. And this is part of the book. I have the book right here since I was just grabbing it before the talk. And all 5 of these happened to me. So as I go through them, all 5 of them happened to me working at Google, which is where I currently also work. So the good news is I didn't quit. Like I went back and I realized I didn't have to quit something. I just wasn't aligned with what mattered to me. And so these 5 signs are about the alignment, like kind of noting when you're in or out of alignment. So the first one is you used to love your job and or at least enjoy it, and now you loathe it. So for some reason there's like been a turn of events and you're just like, man, and you like grudgingly go in, or you're just bored, or there's like this animosity or ambivalence even with a role, with a job. The second sign is that your boss tells you in some way, shape, or form it's not working out. And so for me, I literally got that wake up call when, after months of my manager sharing feedback that I wasn't meeting expectations, that maybe this wasn't the job for me, and that I would want to consider doing something else. And she had the best intentions for me too. But think about when, or if even you've kind of had notions of that. If you're working full time, or like this could apply even though it was a job setting for me, it could be pretty much anything that's going on in your life. Like it might be a hobby, or it could be like a endeavor that you're vested in, or your life. the third,
You're
the
just feeling
third
like despondent about, oh, like I just have so much to do, or I just have so much going on, and you're not really feeling that good flow of like enthusiasm, right? Or energy for
Yeah, I
it.
mean,
Yeah.
yeah, and
And maybe get some feedback from others like, wow, you really don't even seem like you want to be here. Like maybe you find yourself drifting onto your phone instead of paying attention at dinner.
yeah, well, that's the
I
third
think,
that's the third pause actually, is
okay.
the technology intervention. So you either give yourself an intervention like, "Hey, hold on a second, why am I always tethered to my device?" Or someone else might mention it, like a loved one or someone in your family who really cares about you and just says, "I noticed you're always on the phone," or, "We always are at dinner with the screens," or so on and so forth. So for me, it was my friend who just happened to notice all the time I was on my email anytime we were together. I was literally on my email every time, and she was just like, "That's weird. Like that's not usually you." And it was kind of, I was like, "Wow, like she's right. What am I doing?" And it was like a third wake up call of mine. And so then the fourth sign is that you have a challenge. This could literally be all of us in the pandemic, COVID-19 era, right? Where we're faced with some challenges now that we haven't always had in this new normal, and adapting to our new regimen. So this could be also things like a health challenge, could be like a relationship challenge, a family challenge, anything like that, where you're just kind of something's off, and you want it to be better, but you're not sure how. And then the last one is that an opportunity knocks, or it's like literally the opposite, where you have an inkling to maybe do like an itch to do something different. Maybe it's an itch to start a new hobby, or use some creative power right now, where we're potentially harvesting a lot of creative power, where we're all at home in this environment, something like that. So you decide to give that some time and some love, and maybe try something different. So those are the 5 signs, Vanessa. Real quick, it's you used to love your job, or your life or something. Now you're not so happy. Your boss tells you it's not working out. You have a technology intervention from someone or somebody who cares about you. You have a challenge, or you have an opportunity. And that pretty much covers the whole spectrum, I think, of like life. And I would ask everyone who's listening to think back, or even you don't have to think back that far, but how many of those signs are happening to you right now or recently? And maybe one of them, or 5 of them, or in between. And my guess is we all have at least one, which is the challenge with literally the planet pause right now. For me, I had all 5, and now and then I have technology interventions coming on too. So yeah, they're important to note.
Absolutely. And I'm curious, like, for folks who are listening, even if you're listening to the recording, you can go ahead and put in the chat. And I realize that if you're on the Raising Our Resilience page where it just says Raising Our Resilience, you can't see Rachel. So you're going to need to join the parent group to watch the rest of this. So I invite you to head over there. So yeah, I think it would be interesting to hear if any of those kind of popped for people, even if you're listening to the recording. Like, is the first, second, third, fourth, or fifth. If any of that was sparked, you're like, oh, you know what? That's me. Like, I'm feeling that too. And again, it doesn't have to be in the job environment, right? It can be in any role, that important role that you play,
Yep.
as a parent, as a partner, as a leader of a group, a volunteer group, something else that you do where you're just not feeling that same connection to it, and these symptoms are coming up. Yeah.
Yeah, and exactly. So think of it about your life. And again, a pause is an intentional shift in behavior. So it's not like you got to go take time out of your day and meditate for 5 minutes even. That's not the case. I actually think my whole philosophy is around integrating pausing as a way of life so that every day you can have a couple moments to yourself. It doesn't need to be a lot of time. It can literally be, there's research on this. If there's 3 minutes for 30 seconds for 6 times a day, so the total of 3 minutes, if you practice gratitude, for example, that actually leads to improved mood and more joy. That's 3 minutes a day. To me, that's so intentional, and that's such a powerful way to invoke the power of pause. It's worth it. I think 3 minutes would be worth it. And if you're finding yourself thinking like, oh, like I don't have 3 minutes, Rachel, or I don't have 1 minute, I don't know, I don't even know, then I would say, one of my favorite quotes is from Gabby Bernstein, and she says, well, if you don't have time for a minute, do you have time to feel like crap? And we need to create the time, we need to create the space, because our old ways of being are not working.
Yeah.
And especially in our pandemic, they're not working. And the science side of this is that the recent statistics are kind of like horrible in terms of burnout, but 75% of Americans feel overwhelmed and want to leave their job at least 50% of the time. And that might include the job of parenting, by the way, right? And burnout is higher than ever with COVID. So about 72% of people are experiencing burnout versus 42% before COVID overall. So, I mean, it's really scary. And the neuroscience of this that I want to share is that when we are in that overwhelmed state, so when we're in the fight or flight, and you may know this as the amygdala hijack, or just feeling that limbic system like flaring up.
Yeah, in our group, we've been calling it, like, we've been using Daniel Siegel's model and saying, like, when our lids are flipped.
When our lids are flipped. I love that. And I love that model too. Dan is, I've studied Dan a lot and wrote papers on him. And I can totally understand I love what he's sharing, because he's bringing this to bear, in that we can know if our lids are flipped, where our bodies and minds are flooded with the neurotransmitter cortisol. And we literally cannot see things. One of the best things I can say is we cannot see the positive. So let's say in anything, if we're feeling like our lids are flipped. So for example, imagine you're walking down the street. You got your mask on and you see someone. Well, it's hard because we don't even see smiles anymore. It's like, hey, Vanessa, and you don't know what's going on. But they might be smiling, but we wouldn't know. And if our lids are flipped, we actually think they're scowling at us. We think they're not. We automatically assume they're not going to be in a joyful state with us. And when we actually would see if they were smiling at us in our own home, let's say, because you don't have your mask on, hopefully in your home, you would think it's a scowl. And our brains are programmed for that. So one is, even when there is good, we don't see it, we miss it. It's like, it doesn't even register when we're in that fight or flight zone.
Wow.
And that's when we're stressed. And then the other thing that I want to share is that when we're in task mode, so, we're all great at doing things, and probably many, many awesome achievers in your group.
Yes, there are. Yeah, can I just, like, first of all, any
Awesome,
parent, yeah, like any
Any
parent
parent
who
is
wants
like,
to show up to these trainings,
like,
while
oh,
they're raising their children and managing the household, and many of them are also working part-time or full-time, are achievers. I'll just say, just to be able to, wear all those hats, for sure. Yeah.
Right. So like even doing that is so significant. And you got to have the checklist probably going off, a bazillion times a day in your brain. However, if you're only in the task mode, achieving your great things, and that's like our natural state, is task mode. When we're in that state, we don't switch on the brain that's in the visionary state, in that rest and refresh mode, which is where we're creative. It's like when we're feeling that visionary space. And if you want to do like this whole power pose with me, just put your arms up for a minute, like with me, if you want to do this. on the screen for like 30 seconds, even like this is actually flooding our neuro chemicals with oxytocin. You can even like pet your head. This is actually like releasing more oxytocin, which is the feel good chemical, where if you're a nursing mom, this is going on with your children as you're nursing them. Awesome stuff like that. And so like, doesn't that feel good? We do
Yeah.
this to our kids a lot, even our pets, and yet we don't do this. And this is also like a reminder, like they're there, like it's okay, Rachel, we can be our own parents to ourselves. So that's so important. But the thing to remember is we need to create this space to bring in that rest and refresh mode and not be in the task mode, because our brains and our bodies cannot replenish when we're in that. And I want to say that again, because it's like a big, huge news flash. I know I didn't know this, but when we're in task mode, we actually cannot get nourished. We cannot feel that replenishing mode, because we're in the task mode. It's called the default mode network. Richard Boyzatis talks about this, and it's all good. It's like where we're most productive and we're in the flow of things. But if we don't like take that step back to say, what color is the sky right now? Well, it's kind of blue with some wispy clouds. Like, wow, it does look pretty out there. And that tree kind of calling my name, and the wind is out there. All of a sudden I'm in like that more visionary space. And it can just be switching to look at the colors, to look at the using your five senses, what you're seeing, what you're hearing, smelling, tasting, or touching. And that can change our state. And that can be like a moment in time. That can be 30 seconds or even more or less, depending on what you have. So that's a little bit.
Sometimes that is all that parents have because they're in the middle of juggling so many things. I mean, I've got like Tiffany's here on Zoom, and we've got some folks listening on the Facebook group as well. If you're here, say hi. Love to know who's here. And let us know if you have any questions for Rachel, because we have her for about 10 more minutes, by the way. And this is where it gets really interesting to me, okay? Because oftentimes we know this is a good idea, Rachel. We know, like, we get it, like, and it's really helpful to have this information to kind of engage our minds into like the reasoning behind it, because then if our minds can buy into it, right, then we can see that it can be as important or even more important than the tasks we think we need to get done instead of doing the pause. But I'm curious, like, what have you found really helpful to get folks from just knowing that it's a good idea to actually doing it, and then doing it with enough regularity so that it starts to become that lifestyle? Like, what's our first step into like bringing this home into our bodies and our lives? What would you recommend, especially for busy parents? Like, what comes to mind, since you've helped so many people with this? So I'm so curious.
Yeah, and I work a lot with parents, moms, dads, who really are trying to assess what can be done, and then learning those new habits. Because let's face it, this is creating new ways of being that may not have been in our repertoire before we really needed it, right? And I'm curious if anyone's listening and they have anything, like a tip or something they'd share. Like, I'd love you to share it too, because as parents, I know all of you have probably incredible coping mechanisms already. And the idea is that, like, we can use our collective hive mentality to learn from each other, which I know you guys do here. The other thing I want to mention is, I think I talk about this all the time, where it's one thing to know it on a cognitive level, right? It's one thing to know how to parent, but to actually like be in it, experience it, it's a whole nother world. I know we all are in agreement on that one, I'm sure. So it's the same with pausing. It's like we know better, and I call it the pause paradox. To me, the pause paradox is like thinking you'll look like a slacker, or you're going to fall behind, or you're not going to do what you want to do or need to do because you took that time to intentionally shift your behavior and pause. And so the first key is to know it's okay to pause. Like, that's step number one, just to say, like, it's okay to pause. And I think of it in terms of it's pausing. Pausing is being in service to your doing. It's in service to your doing. In other words, when you do pause, it can be active. It's intentional. It doesn't mean you're just like hanging out doing nothing, twiddling your thumbs. It can be that, but it's also this like replenishment time for you, and for you to be your own wise leader, to be your own best person, then we really need to take that time to replenish. And so the first thing to do is like, yeah, I know that, Rachel, it sounds great, but like I still can't get to do it. So one of the ways that I like to offer the first step is remember that like it doesn't take a lot of time. So to do something that you're already doing, but doing something mindfully. And all mindfulness is, according to one of my mentors, Ellen Langer, a research psychologist out of Harvard, she says all mindfulness is the act of noticing new things and keeping things novel. And I heartedly agree with her. Like, yes. So the next time you are brushing your teeth, or maybe you're chopping carrots for dinner, what are you noticing? And like obviously being careful with a knife if you're cutting things, but like you're like that's mindfulness, that's pausing in my opinion. So it could be really being intentional with your words as you're sharing with your child, like what's going on if they're old enough to be in the kitchen with you in that scenario. So the key is to incorporate it into a way of being, even if it's for 30 seconds or a minute each day. I'm a big believer in the law of little things, which is literally like the baby steps can get you there. And big change doesn't happen with big leaps, as we probably have all known, especially with our kids, right? It's the little things, like one thing after the next. So try one thing today before bedtime that would be considered mindfulness, a mindful activity. What could you do today that you can incorporate some active noticing new things? That doesn't take extra time. It actually can be kind of fun. You can even play and engage with that. You know, we all play I Spy probably. That's noticing new things. You know, and whoever gets like we've played that for years and decades, and like you may have done that your whole life maybe, and it's like fun, and that's because we're noticing new things. And so that's the invitation I have for all of you, is to try that today.
Yeah, and I love this. I'm like posing the question right into the chat. I said, like, what could you do today that could help you notice new things, like play an I Spy game or other games? And I think the most important thing, two things that I heard you say that just really stood out to me. And this is, I know, Rachel, because you're so well versed in this, you have such like great insights. I'm tickled that you're here. Is that you can do it for short amounts of time, and you can just notice new things about things you're already doing. I think that sometimes is the piece that's lost. Like you said, people think of pause as like attending a meditation class or doing something that's like separate and structured, which is also valuable. Don't get me wrong, but just to know that as a lifestyle pauser, you can just look around and see or feel or sense what you're already doing with more mindfulness. And to me, that's it's like magical or something. It brings to mind too, this thing that I've talked to parents a lot about is that their children's like, their children are always like taking in everything until you make something more important than another thing, and then they pay attention to it, which is really important because they're too wide open when they're little. So we're helping them to narrow and understand like what they need to pay attention to. Like for example, when they're walking, if they're watching the clouds but not watching their feet, they'll probably trip. So you help them like realize that when you're in motion, you need to see where you're like, watch where you're going. But yeah, and we help them and they narrow. But then sometimes what happens to in adulthood is that, especially around high school and college, we get so focused in that we stop taking in our environment. And then by the time we are like, you know, pushing through all of our like high school or college courses, and we're just trying to get those, especially achievers, trying to get that course done, or once we have our baby and all we can do is just pay attention to the baby and nothing else around us, like forget about like if the plant's dying in the corner, you have no idea, right? Like, so when you're in that place where you're so narrow, it can be so incredibly helpful to your nervous system to broaden and take in more of what's around you, especially if you find something like beautiful, meaningful, like just good to look at. Something to find the good is a big piece, right? Just find one good thing around you. I'm like, oh, look, that blue on the is just looks so bright today. It's just beautiful. It kind of reminds me of a sunny day. And just even something that simple, like this blue thing that's been next to me for like 3 years. I've never really taken the time to appreciate the color of blue. is brilliant. It's so accessible. So thank you for not making it like go sign up for a, like you have to show up every day for an hour to make this work.
No, not at all. I think that's a really big myth, to be honest. And I think that's where we all can be the leaders in our own lives to say, what can I do today before bedtime where I can spend like some part of my moments by moments, like just, maybe 30 seconds doing active noticing new things. And that's where you start. And if you've already got like a breath practice maybe or a mindful walk, you can do like your first 3 bites of any meal just mindfully, like just let the tastes like explode in your mouth and notice that. That's what we're talking about here. So it's not rocket science, but the issue is it's a new habit and we're creatures of habit, as we all know. So it's about intention and knowing that there is more for you. Like there is another way of being that can be more satisfying and just more fulfilling. And that's through, I think, this intentional shift in behavior.
And you also have a weekly way that people can like come and drop in with you on Fridays. Is that right?
I do, yeah. So I know you were in our group on my group on Friday, which was so fun. I have a community on Facebook called Be the Pause Sisterhood. So this is for women and those who are she, her pronouns, who want to commune and essentially be in support with everyone. And every Friday, I do a Pause Friday tip. And we'll do a video. I'll do like 15 minutes live with me. And sometimes we have guest speakers on, like yourself. So you're constantly learning something new. We do pauses together. So we might even just spend a few moments like looking out. If I've got like a beautiful sky, I'll put my camera outside or I'll be outside myself. But it's literally a moment to practice the discipline of it and just start to create that new habit, but also to connect and have fun and do all that stuff too.
Well, and what I love about what you're sharing with us is not just for us, and of course, I'm always thinking about the children. I can't help it. I'm always like whole family. Is that when we allow ourselves to drift into what our children are paying attention to, that's a great pause for us because they are going to, I guarantee, notice 100 things a day that you don't put your attention on, and sometimes it's hard because it's distracting to what your goal is. But I just recommend sometimes go with it. Go with it. Look at that shiny rock too. Notice that the cloud looks like a moon today too, and build in some pause of like getting to see through your child's eyes. That's one thing you could do with kids.
Great
That I wanted
pause.
to
Yeah,
bring
love
up. Yeah. And then the other thing is knowing that, we often need to like keep up our practice. Like that's why people keep coming to my talks here, is because they need to hear this like other way of seeing like challenging behaviors with kids, right? Like, oh my gosh, what good could there possibly be, or what opportunity could there possibly be in a meltdown? And I feel like for you, Rachel, it's like you're building in this like what good, like what could possibly come from the pause if we were to acknowledge like I'm stressed, instead of being like, oh no, I'm stressed out. Oh no, I'm burning out. Oh no, I don't like what I'm doing. There must be something wrong. Just like dropping into your group and for a pause on Fridays and just getting that moment to remind yourself that it's possible to reset your nervous system in these little micro moments. I just love it. So great. So, and it does help, right? It helps to have facilitation. Like, that from your being mentored. I know that from being mentored too. Like, if you're around it enough, you start to like
you start
adopt
to
it.
integrate it. You start to integrate it into ways of being that weren't there before. And that's, research tells us that we need 30 to 60 days, 66 days to create a new habit. So it doesn't happen overnight, but if you go 30 times, you'll probably have it after that.
Yeah, it's right. And then there's also social learning. Like we tend to do more of what we see other people doing. Like, I don't know about you, but I'm much more likely to do a full sequence of like a yoga thing if I have a video or if I'm in a class than if I'm just by myself, So,
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm like in the camp. Yeah.
yeah. And then we get to kind of like collectively run the show together instead of having to be like, what was that? And have to reach in and, dig deep. So Fridays at noon, but then you also have a special event coming up in December that you just wanted to tell folks real quick about before you have to run.
Yeah, real quick, I'm doing a 5-day training. It's called the Overwhelm Fix. 5 steps to take back to reclaim your sanity and your life. So we're going to be practicing and learning a bunch of these tools that I teach folks. December 7th we start, and it'll all be in my sisterhood group. So if you're actually a dad or a parent, don't worry. I'm probably going to be having something for everyone eventually. But for now, the women can join that. And I have my author page, Rachael O'Meara, author of Pause, and you can like that and probably get more information as we have the recordings and everything like that.
Wonderful. Oh, I'm so excited for everybody. And was that a free event or a paid event?
Free. It's going to be totally free. I haven't done one because I just finished my master's degree in July. I haven't had the bandwidth to do it. So now my pausing is expanded, and it'll be free for the 5 days starting on the 7th of December. Perfect time before the holidays, or in the middle of the holidays, probably for
Wow.
Americans.
That's just so generous of you. And you're even going to have the recordings up in your group for folks who can't come live, right? So as long as they're in the group, they'll be able to access it.
Absolutely. Yeah. We all need
Excellent.
more pausing these days, I think.
Well, Rachel, thank you so, so much. Thank you for sharing your precious time. I know you're so busy with your job at Google, being an author and being like you're going around doing trainings at corporate level and personal level. If you're coaching, coaching clients, you're just so busy. And if you can do it and show up to this, share what you have, build in the pauses in your life, I think we all can. So you're an inspiration.
You can
And
expand your capacity. Trust me, you can. Yeah.
yes, that's what we need. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Let's
thanks.
all get out of overwhelm and get off the road to burnout with Rachel. We'll come head over and hang out with you on Fridays. I put the link in the Facebook group. I also go ahead and put the link in the Zoom chat here. Rachel, I know you need to run, so if you got to go, no problem. And that way we can all stay in touch with you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Vanessa, for having me. It's so fun to collaborate with you and contribute. So thanks again. And for all of you listening who might have resonated with Pause, thank you. And I hope to see you soon again in the group Be the Pause Sisterhood. Thanks. Bye.
Bye for now.
Bye-bye.